Chapter 10, Lesson 1, Solving Quadratic Equations by the Square Root Property. So, the equation for the square root property is x squared equals a for a greater than or equal to 0. Then x equals the square root of a, or x equals the negative square root of a. So, let's start with the first question. Number 1. X squared minus 10 equals 0. So the first step we're going to do is add 10 to both sides, and by adding 10 to both sides, we'll cancel out the negative 10. And so we'll be left with x squared, since nothing was added with it, and then we'll have 10, because positive 10 plus 0 is obviously not a negative 10. So now what we're going to do is square both sides. And what we'll get when we square both sides is x squared equals plus or minus 10. Nothing like 5 times 5 or 2 times 2, 4 times 4 can square up to 10. 10 isn't a perfect square. So we'll be left with x equals square root of 10, or x equals the negative square root of 10. So do you see what we did here? Alright, so here's a little overview. So we added 10 to cancel this, so we crossed that out. Then we added 10 to 0, positive 10, squared both sides. X squared equals plus or minus 10. Then x, since it wasn't a perfect square, it's x equals square root of 10, or x equals the negative square root of 10. Okay, so now we'll move on to the second question. Number 2. So x minus 3 squared in parentheses, the parentheses will be squared, equals 16. So the first step is we're using the square root property, and we're going to square both sides this time. So it's going to be x minus 3 equals plus or minus 16. So now 16 is a perfect square, so it's going to be 4 times 4 equals 16. So that's what we are going to use. We are going to use plus or minus 4. X equals 4. X minus 3 equals 4. Or x minus 3 equals negative 4. So now, the second step we are going to do for this problem is that we're going to add 3, just like the same one we did here. We're going to add 3 to cancel out the negative 3. So it's going to be x equals 7, because 4 plus 3 equals 7. And now we're going to do the same thing here. Cancel out the 3. X equals negative 1. So the two solutions are negative 1, 7. So, and to see if this is true, we can do a check, which I will show you how to check right now. So, for 7, we are going to do the same thing like we did for before, the original equation. And then we're going to add the 7 here. So it'll turn out to be 7 minus 3 squared equals 16. Now, we're going to do... So 7 minus 3 equals 4. So this will carry on with the 4. So 4 squared equals 16. And 4 squared, as we did here, 4 times 4 equals 16. So it'll turn out to be true. because they are the same number. And for the other, for negative 1, we're going to write down the original equation like we did here, equals 16. So now for this, x is going to be negative 1. So it's going to be negative 1 minus 3 squared equals 16. A negative and minus will turn out to be a plus. So you're really adding, but it will be negative 4 squared equals 16. And the same thing, negative 4 times negative 4 equals a positive because of integer rules. Positive times positive, negative times negative equals positive. So what we're going to do, 16 equals 16. And so this equation is true because the check was true by the results. So now we'll move on to the final equation. So, number 3. 2x squared equals 7. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to divide both sides by 2. Right here. So 2 cancels out, it's 1, so it's going to be x squared equals 7 over 2. So now we're going to square both sides, but we're going to be left with x equals 7. It's going to be the square root of 7 over 2, or x equals the negative square root of 7 over 2. So if the denominators are rationalized, we have x equals square root of 7 times the square root of 2 over square root of 2 times the square root of 2. And this will be x equals 14 over 2. That will be, or x equals 7 square root of 7 times square root of 2, and the square root of 2 times square root of 2. X equals negative square root of 14 over 2. So the two true solutions to this equation will be negative square root of 14 over 2 and the square root of 14 over 2. And this is it for chapter 10, lesson 1, solving quadratic equations by the square root property. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed.